The first rays of dawn painted the African savanna in shades of gold and amber, casting long shadows across the vast expanse of grassland that stretched endlessly toward the horizon. In this ancient theater of life and death, where survival depends on split-second decisions and the bonds of family, a story was about to unfold that would challenge everything we think we know about the natural world. Deep within a grove of magnificent acacia trees, their gnarled branches reaching toward the heavens like the weathered hands of ancient spirits, a family of mountain gorillas began their day in the tranquil rhythm that had sustained their kind for millennia. The air was thick with the sweet scent of morning dew and the earthy perfume of rich soil, while the gentle whisper of wind through leaves created nature's own lullaby. At the heart of this peaceful sanctuary stood Kibo, the silverback patriarch whose massive frame commanded respect from every creature in the territory. His silver-streaked back gleamed in the filtered sunlight as he maintained his vigilant watch over his beloved family. His deep, intelligent eyes surveyed their domain with the wisdom of countless seasons, ever alert to potential dangers that might threaten those under his protection. Below him, in the dappled shade of the acacia canopy, the females of the troop moved with graceful efficiency, their powerful hands delicately selecting the choicest leaves and fruits for their morning meal. Their movements were poetry in motion, each gesture refined by generations of survival and adaptation to their environment. Among the adults, several youngsters played with the carefree abandon that only the truly innocent can possess. They tumbled and wrestled in the soft grass, their joyful grunts and squeaks creating a symphony of pure happiness that echoed through the grove. These playful interactions were more than mere entertainment. They were the building blocks of social bonds that would sustain them throughout their lives. In the midst of this idyllic scene, one particularly small gorilla captured the heart with his infectious curiosity and boundless energy. Little Jengo, barely 2 years old, possessed an insatiable hunger for discovery that made every moment an adventure. His dark eyes sparkled with intelligence and mischief as he explored his world with the fearless enthusiasm of youth. Unlike his more cautious siblings, Django viewed every butterfly as a potential friend, every rustling leaf as a mystery to be solved, and every shadow as an invitation to explore. His tiny hands would reach for anything that caught his attention, from the intricate patterns of tree bark to the delicate petals of wildflowers that bloomed in hidden corners of their territory. His mother, Asha, watched him with the mixture of pride and concern that only a parent can understand. Her maternal instincts were finely tuned to his every movement, ready to intervene at the first sign of danger. She had already saved him from numerous minor mishaps, from getting stuck in tree branches to wandering too close to the edge of steep ravines. On this particular morning, as Asha became absorbed in the delicate task of extracting termites from a fallen log, her attention was momentarily diverted from her adventurous son. It was a split-second lapse that would soon have consequences neither of them could have imagined. As fate would have it, at that precise moment, a creature of extraordinary beauty chose to make its appearance in their peaceful world. A butterfly, its wings shimmering with iridescent blues and purples that seemed to capture fragments of the sky itself, danced through the air with ethereal grace. Each flutter of its delicate wings caught the morning light, creating a display so mesmerizing that it seemed almost magical. Django's eyes widened with wonder as he watched this flying jewel perform its aerial ballet. Never before had he seen anything so captivating, so utterly enchanting. The butterfly seemed to beckon to him, its graceful movements creating an invisible thread that pulled at his curious heart. Without a second thought, without considering the consequences, Jengo began to follow. His small feet carried him forward as he reached out with chubby fingers, trying to capture this beautiful creature that remained tantalizingly just beyond his grasp. Each time he drew near, the butterfly would flutter away, leading him on a chase that was as irresistible as it was dangerous. The pursuit took him away from the familiar comfort of the acacia grove, past the protective sight of his family, and into the vast openness of the savanna. The tall grass swayed around him like a golden ocean, its rhythmic movement hiding secrets that his innocent eyes could not perceive. Unbeknownst to the playful youngster, his every movement was being observed by eyes that held no warmth, no compassion, only the cold calculation of predators who had perfected the art of the hunt over countless generations. Hidden within the very grass that provided such beautiful scenery, a clan of spotted hyenas had been tracking the gorilla family for hours, waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity. The pack was led by Kessie, a battle-scarred female whose powerful jaws had crushed the bones of countless prey. Her mottled coat bore the marks of numerous territorial disputes, each scar a testament to her ruthless efficiency as a hunter. Around her, 4 other hyenas maintained perfect silence, their muscles coiled like springs, ready to explode into action at her signal. These were no ordinary scavengers, but apex predators whose intelligence and coordination made them formidable opponents for any creature that dared to underestimate them. Their keen senses had detected the approaching opportunity long before the little gorilla had even noticed the butterfly, and they had positioned themselves with the precision of a military unit. As Django continued his innocent chase, drawing ever farther from the safety of his family, the hyenas moved with him, maintaining their distance while tightening their formation. They communicated through subtle body language and barely audible sounds, their predatory instincts synchronized in a deadly dance of preparation. The butterfly's flight path eventually led Jengo to a small watering hole, its surface reflecting the morning sky like a mirror of polished obsidian. The beautiful creature finally disappeared into the reeds, but the young gorilla had already found a new source of entertainment in the cool, inviting water. With the pure joy that only children possess, Django began to splash and play, his delighted squeaks echoing across the water as he discovered the wonderful sensation of droplets cascading around him. He slapped the surface with his tiny palms, creating concentric circles that rippled outward like liquid poetry. For a few precious moments, he was the embodiment of innocence and happiness, completely unaware that his world was about to change forever. The morning sun warmed his back as he played, and the gentle breeze carried the familiar sense of home, creating a false sense of security that would soon be shattered. It was then that the shadows began to move. From the golden grass that surrounded the watering hole, dark shapes began to materialize with the fluid grace of nightmares taking form. First one head appeared, then another, until all 5 hyenas had revealed themselves in a coordinated display of predatory intent that sent chills through the very air. They didn't rush forward immediately. Instead, they began to circle their prey with the patient intelligence that made them such successful hunters. Their movements were hypnotic and terrifying, each step calculated to maximize psychological impact while minimizing the chance of escape. Django's playful splashing gradually slowed as an instinctive dread began to creep into his consciousness. The sudden silence that had fallen over the watering hole was deafening, broken only by the soft padding of paws on earth and the low rumble of predatory breathing. When he finally looked up and saw the ring of spotted death surrounding him, his small world exploded into pure, primal terror. The innocent joy that had filled his eyes moments before was replaced by a fear so profound that it seemed to freeze his very soul. The lead hyena, her scarred muzzle twisted into what might have been mistaken for a grin if not for the deadly intent in her eyes, let out a bone-chilling laugh that echoed across the savannah like a war cry. It was a sound that spoke of ancient hunts and primal fears, a voice from the darkest corners of the natural world. That laugh was the signal that shattered Django's paralysis. With a high-pitched cry of terror that could have broken hearts across the continent, he scrambled out of the water and began to run. His small legs pumped frantically as he fled toward the distant tree line, toward the memory of safety and family that seemed impossibly far away. Behind him, the hyenas erupted into motion with explosive force. Their powerful shoulders bunched and released with each stride, propelling them forward with a speed that made mockery of the little gorilla's desperate flight. The sound of their pursuit was like thunder rolling across the earth, a percussion of paws and panting breath that seemed to shake the very ground beneath Django's feet. The distance between predator and prey began to close with terrifying inevitability. Django could feel their hot breath on his back, could hear their claws tearing at the grass just inches behind his heels. His lungs burned with the effort of running faster than his small body had ever been asked to move, and his heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. As the chase reached its crescendo, Django stumbled on a hidden root, his small form tumbling forward before he managed to catch himself just before falling. That momentary lapse in speed was all the hyenas needed. The lead predator surged forward with a burst of speed that closed the final gap between hunter and prey. Her massive jaws opened wide, revealing teeth that had been honed by evolution into perfect instruments of death. Time seemed to slow to a crawl as she launched herself through the air, her powerful muscles propelling her toward the defenseless youngster who had nowhere left to run. Django squeezed his eyes shut and let out a cry that contained all the terror and helplessness of a child facing the unthinkable. In that moment, he called out for his mother, for his family, for anyone who might save him from the nightmare that was about to engulf him. It seemed as though his short life was about to end before it had truly begun, cut short by the cruel realities of a world where innocence offered no protection against the harsh laws of survival. But just as the hyena's teeth were about to find their mark, a roar of such power and majesty erupted across the savanna that it seemed to shake the very foundations of the earth. It was a sound that spoke of absolute authority, of power so immense that it could not be challenged or ignored. The hyenas skidded to a halt as if they had struck an invisible wall, their predatory confidence evaporating like morning mist before the sun. Even Kessie, the battle-hardened leader, recoiled from that thunderous proclamation, her eyes wide with sudden uncertainty. From the tall grass to their left, a figure of such magnificent power emerged that it seemed to have stepped out of legend itself. A massive male lion, his golden mane flowing like a crown of sunlight around his regal head, strode into the clearing with the calm confidence of absolute dominion. This was no ordinary lion, but a king in the truest sense of the word. His amber eyes held the wisdom of ages, and his presence commanded instant respect from every creature within sight. He moved with deliberate grace, each step a statement of power and purpose that could not be misunderstood. Without hesitation, the magnificent lion positioned himself directly between the cowering Django and the confused hyena pack. His massive frame created an impenetrable barrier of muscle and determination, while his steady gaze promised swift and terrible retribution to any who dared to challenge his authority. The hyenas, for all their reputation as fearless scavengers, found themselves facing a foe they could not intimidate or overwhelm. This was the apex predator of the African plains, a creature whose very presence redefined the balance of power in any encounter. But the lion's intervention, miraculous as it was, had not gone unnoticed by other eyes. From the direction of the acacia grove, the ground began to tremble with the approaching footsteps of creatures driven by an even more powerful force than territorial dominance, the fury of family protection. The trees themselves seemed to shake as 4 adult gorillas burst through the vegetation with a speed that belied their massive size. Leading them was Kibo, the silverback patriarch, his eyes blazing with a paternal rage that transformed him from gentle giant into an unstoppable force of nature. The sound of their approach was like approaching thunder, a combination of guttural roars, chest beating, and the percussion of powerful feet against earth. Their display of strength was both beautiful and terrifying, a demonstration of the bonds that tie families together across all species. Behind Kibo came Asha, Jengo's mother, her face a mask of desperation and determination. No force on earth could have stopped her from reaching her child, and her presence added an emotional intensity to the scene that transcended the merely physical. The hyenas now found themselves trapped in a nightmare scenario of their own making. On one side stood the lion, silent and immovable, his golden eyes promising death to any who dared to move against his protection. On the other side, the gorilla family presented an equally formidable obstacle, their combined strength and fury creating an impenetrable wall of family loyalty. The hunters had become the hunted, caught between 2 forces of nature that should have been enemies but had instead united in defense of the innocent. The irony was not lost on the more intelligent members of the hyena pack, who began to understand that their hunt had led them into a trap of their own making. For long moments, the standoff continued, with neither side willing to back down. The tension in the air was so thick it could almost be touched, while the only sounds were the heavy breathing of the combatants and the soft whimpering of the terrified youngster who had unknowingly become the center of this dramatic confrontation. Finally, faced with odds they could not overcome and foes they could not defeat, the hyena pack made the only decision that wisdom would allow. With a final, defeated howl that spoke of frustration and acknowledgement of defeat, they began to retreat. Their withdrawal was neither graceful nor dignified, but it was complete. One by one, they melted back into the tall grass from which they had emerged, their threatening presence dissolving like a bad dream in the morning light. As the last of their spotted forms disappeared into the golden sea of grass, a profound silence fell over the watering hole. It was a silence filled with emotion, with gratitude, and with the kind of understanding that transcends species and speaks to the deepest truths of existence. In the aftermath of terror, the most beautiful moment of all unfolded. Asha rushed forward, her powerful arms gathering her frightened child against her chest with a gentleness that contradicted her enormous strength. There was no scolding, no anger over his disobedience, only the overwhelming relief of a mother who had almost lost the most precious thing in her world. She held him close, rocking gently as she had when he was even smaller, her soft grunts of comfort creating a cocoon of safety around his trembling form. Her forehead touched his in a gesture of pure, unconditional love that spoke louder than any words could have done. Meanwhile, the lion remained motionless, watching this tender reunion with eyes that seemed to hold a deeper understanding of the scene's significance. His tail gave a slow, gentle flick, perhaps the only sign of the satisfaction he felt at the successful conclusion of his intervention. What happened next was perhaps the most extraordinary moment of all. Kibo, the silverback leader, took a step forward, not in aggression but in recognition of what had just occurred. He and the lion found themselves separated by only a few feet of grass, their eyes meeting in a moment of profound communication. It was a conversation without words, a meeting of minds between two kings who understood the weight of leadership and the responsibility that came with power. In that shared glance, respect was given and received, gratitude was expressed and acknowledged. Kibo gave a slow, deliberate nod, a gesture that conveyed more than 1,000 words could have done. It was a thank you, a recognition of debt, and an acknowledgement of the lion's nobility all rolled into one simple movement. The lion's response was equally eloquent. A long, slow blink, the highest sign of trust and non-aggression in the feline world, answered the silverback's gratitude with regal grace. In that moment, an understanding passed between them that transcended the normal boundaries of species and territory. His duty fulfilled and his purpose served, the magnificent lion turned and began to walk away. His departure was as dignified as his arrival had been dramatic, his golden form gradually disappearing into the savanna as quietly as he had emerged. He left behind a scene transformed not just by his actions, but by the profound demonstration of compassion and courage that had just unfolded. The watering hole, which had so recently been a place of terror, had become a stage for one of nature's most beautiful truths: that heroism exists in many forms, and that the bonds of protection extend far beyond the boundaries we imagine. As the gorilla family made their way back toward the safety of their acacia grove, with Jengo held securely in his mother's arms, the events of that morning would become part of their collective memory. It was a story that would be told through generations, not in words but in the deeper language of shared experience and inherited wisdom. The lesson learned was profound. In a world that often seems driven by competition and conflict, there are moments when different species can unite in defense of the innocent. The lion's intervention had not just saved a life. It had demonstrated that compassion and courage are universal languages that transcend the barriers we often assume exist in nature. For little Django, the morning's adventure had taught him the importance of staying close to family, but it had also shown him that the world contained protectors he had never imagined. As he grew older, he would carry with him the memory of the golden guardian who had appeared when all seemed lost, proof that heroes come in many forms. The African savanna continued its eternal dance of life and death, predator and prey, danger and safety. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting new shadows and illuminating new dramas that would unfold in the endless theater of the wild. But in one small corner of this vast landscape, a story had been written that would resonate far beyond its humble setting. It was a story of courage, compassion, and the unexpected connections that can arise when different species unite in defense of the innocent. The hyenas would hunt again, driven by the same instincts that had brought them to the watering hole. The gorillas would continue their peaceful existence, ever vigilant for threats to their family. And somewhere in the golden grass, a lion would continue his solitary patrol, ready to answer the call of justice when it came. But for those who witnessed or heard of that morning's events, the world had become a slightly different place. It was a world where the impossible could happen, where enemies could become allies, and where the simple act of protecting the innocent could bridge the greatest divides. In the end, that may be the greatest lesson of all, that heroism is not defined by species or size, but by the willingness to stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves. In a world that often seems divided by fear and misunderstanding, the story of the lion, the gorilla, and the hyenas reminds us that compassion is the universal language that connects all living things. The morning sun continued its journey across the African sky, but its light now illuminated a world where miracles were possible, where hope could triumph over fear, and where the bonds of protection extended far beyond the boundaries of family and species. It was a world made better by the simple act of one magnificent creature who chose to be a hero when heroism was needed most. Thank you for watching this video. I would be grateful for your like. Please do not forget to subscribe so as not to miss other interesting stories. See you soon.